Kia ora katoa. Good afternoon, everyone. We're continuing the hearing of submissions on the Canterbury Land and Water Regional Plan, change number 7. The first submission on this afternoon's agenda is the submission of the Sparrow Family Trust. Welcome to you. You're Miss Sparrow, are you?
My name is Mary Sparrow. Yes, I represent both the Sparrow Family Trust, which is the property that I am responsible for, and also myself as an individual who is a independent social researcher.
Well, thank you very much. We have read the submission.
Thank you.
We have the evidence statement that you've put in, so you don't need to read them to us unless you want to. But this is the opportunity for you to say what you want to say about the submission and answer any questions that we might have, should there be any.
Thank you very much. Very briefly, my first submission relates to the issue of the factors that are to be taken into account when consents to take water are reviewed. My concern is that solely taking account of the volumes which had been drawn in the preceding period might in fact be a little too restrictive, and I'm suggesting that I would like to see a wider range of factors included in that policy 8.4.25. I think the major concern around that relates to the air allocation zone, which is a very large area covering a large proportion of the Waimakariri-Ashley Plain. And I find it very hard as somebody who lives just to the west of Ahoka to understand how any water that I might draw from my well to irrigate has any implication or any implications for the groundwater to the south of the Eyre River and vice versa. So that's really the area of major concern that I have, and I feel that although understanding the statutory requirement, if you have an area that is over-allocated, that you must pull it back in terms of consented allocation, there could be some greater attention paid to variations across the area allocation zone. My other concerns really relate to the issue of whether, in fact, the period that's taken into account when the situation is reviewed adequately reflects the variations in rainfall, and particularly summer rainfall. So that's really the basis of my concerns with respect to that policy, sir.
Well, thank you for that. I've made a note of that and we listened to it. Is there anything further that you wish to say about either the Family Trust submission or on your own behalf?
I'd like to turn to my other submission, which relates to policy 8.4.35, and that asks, it's the monitoring policy, and it asks for specific wording to be added as part E of that policy, which focuses on local and legacy issues that I would like with respect to nitrate nitrogen levels across the area. And I would like to see those not only taken into account, but also reports prepared to indicate how these might be overcome. My major concern, I think, there is that maybe the focus has been a little too narrow as far as emphasising the impact of dairy farming, when in fact across quite significant areas within the Waimak-Ashley Plain, high nitrates were recorded in the period prior to the advent of Waimak irrigation in 2000. So, and I provided, as part of my hearing submission, significant information about the levels of nitrates recorded, particularly in the area in the vicinity of Cust. The other point I make is that, of course, in 2000, when I was involved with working for the Waimakariri District Council, we were handling submissions from Environment Canterbury dealing with concerns about the possibility of increasing the levels of settlement in the unsewered community at Cust. Because at that stage, Environment Canterbury, or during the 90s, had found significantly elevated levels of nitrogen down gradient of unsewered communities. So that really is the major thrust of my second submission on policy 8.4.35.
Well, that's a very helpful reminder of the main issues that you brought before us and that we've been reading in your papers about. Thank you. If it's agreeable with you, we'll now pass to any questions that we might have about that.
And I'm happy to take those questions, answer them to the best of my ability.
Yes, I'm sure. It'll be good ability. So, any questions, Commissioner Van Voorthuizen?
No questions, but I suspect your submission on policy 8.4.25 should probably refer to 8.4.24.
Oh, I beg your pardon.
Yeah, 8.4.24 is the one regarding water takes in Schedule 10, whereas 25 is the nitrogen reduction areas in the Waimak. So.
Okay, sorry.
But that's all right, I just
I'm very, very good at making those mistakes because I'm dyslexic, to add to the confusion.
But other than that, no questions. Your evidence sets out clearly what you're asking us to do, I think.
Commissioner Solomon?
No, I have no questions either, thank you.
No, and I don't either. Your writing is very clear to us. Thank you very much, Ms. Sparrow. We do value what you've done for us, and thank you for coming in this afternoon.
Thank you, sir.
The next submission this afternoon is Pineleigh Farm. Is there someone here to speak for them? Mr. Ashby, is it?
That's right. David Ashby, submitted number 372, and I'm here with my wife, Maria, and we're here to, on behalf of our dairy farming business, Pineleigh Farm Limited, and in regard to my own consultancy business, which is Dave Ashby Rural Consultants Limited. If it's all right with you, Commissioners, I would like to take my submission as read.
Yes.
And just highlight...
Do that confidently because we have read it.
Yeah, I hope so. Just in regard to my submission, I'd like to highlight, the main areas of concern that I have, and I'll just give a bit of a background too. So basically the situation is my wife and myself own a 400 cow dairy farm just out of Rangiora. It's not a family farm. We bought it in conjunction with my brother we actually signed up for it after the snow in August 92 and took it over on the 1st of April 1993. So basically we were aged around about 30 at that stage, with the background as a farm advisory officer for the Ministry of Agriculture and Fisheries, and as a private farm consultant. So we threw that all away and went dairy farming. So it was a bit of a steep learning curve at the time, and sort of did that for a number of years, and then later on, as time went on, body sort of broke down a bit and had to digress into other activities. But my scope of evidence today, or the scope of evidence that I provided, was an overview of our farming operation and environmental compliance requirements, the implications and effects of the proposed rule framework, and an overview of how PC7 will affect the whole community. And I offered a solution to the current proposals. So in my evidence on page 4, I indicated that the business is a family business and the next generation are now involved. On page 5, I indicated that we believe we are carrying out good management practices on the farm, and much to the disgust of my wife, we've spent the last 8 odd weekends heavily involved in a major planting program. We're involved in the in a Eastbrook Creek project, which is the significant planting of which we are the major landowner, involving 15 landowners in a planting program. So we've been doing that most weekends over the last over the winter and autumn. COVID's actually played quite well into that. So and we're looking forward to showing how that's going to benefit the environment, and also as it is a spring-fed waterway, look at enhancing Mahinga Kai in particular. So we're quite excited about that, and we are looking at developing that over all of our waterways on our property. The situation is, I suppose, and we sum it up in point 12, we are environmentally focused farmers with a clear direction of where we are going with improvement to our irrigation systems. And basically we started off in 92 with a long lateral irrigation system, and we've gradually replaced that over time to pivots, and improving the use and efficiency of water and reducing the environmental impacts. So basically what the situation was when we took over the property, developed long laterals. We used to milk in the morning and then go out and run around like lunatics on a motorbike shifting these lateral sprinklers, which would take about 2 or 3 hours, and basically you were putting on 50 mils in 24 hours, and yeah, you ended up with a lot of runoff, and it was just not an efficient irrigation system. So we moved to pivots, and now we put on around about 5 mils at the moment, which at this time of the year is roughly the same as our evapotranspiration. And we're very, very fortunate because we're involved in 2 projects. We have the NIWA Justified Irrigation Project, which is leading edge, and which is indicating to us that we are not leaching to drainage, and we also use the weather forecasting protocols within that particular program in order to turn off when we have rain forecast. So it works really well. So with sort of the irrigation, we have the riparian planting and program that we are carrying out. Our drains, the number 4 drain basically collects all the farm drains off our property, and we are also very fortunate to have been involved in a significant project run by John Harding as part of the Carrick's program, where the water quality of that drain was monitored over about a 5 to 10 year period, and it was currently running at around about 2.4 milligrams per litre of nitrate nitrogen and an MCI of 4.5. We did have an issue with DRP, but we have been trying to improve that, but we're entirely focused on improving these levels and reducing our sediment impacts by identifying the critical source areas and managing them effectively. So in terms of us, why am I here? The effect of PC7. Under PC7, we would have to change our farming practices because although we believe we are carrying out good management practices, we cannot meet our baseline 209-213. So basically, the situation is that we have real issues with the ECAN, or the use of the ECAN farm portal. We believe the system is flawed and does not work. We are particularly concerned about the fertiliser and the irrigation proxies, and we believe it's far better to concentrate on actual action and management rather than the use of a flawed model. And I appreciate that the baseline 209-213 was part of the Canterbury Land and Water Regional Plan, and that's supposedly tick box. And I also agree that the farm portal PC5 tick box, but I cannot believe, and I really struggle with the fact that we've taken it through to this level when it simply doesn't work. And you know, I look at my own situation here, and if on page 8, my baseline is 24 to 28. That was when I was operating long lateral systems. I'm currently running at about 14, and my baseline number through the portal is around about 10. And it's simply around the proxies, and I'm thinking, if we had a situation whereby we could use, you know, look at Plan Change 1 and Plan Change 2, which is the use of little GMP in terms of Eyrewell, where you're actually calculating out the amount of irrigation water using ET information and reflecting that, you get a lot better picture out of what good management practice looks like, rather than a situation where you're using a portal number with a trigger and a target. Now, putting on my other hat as a farm environment plan auditor, you go out to a farm and the guy's doing everything right, has all of the systems in place, but because his number does not work in terms of the portal, and remembering that it's if your number in terms of your land use consent is 20 and then you are 21, you're over your number within your resource consent and you're automatically a D. Now, when you're dealing with a model with margin for error of around about 10 or 15%, I just really struggle with that, because, you know, we all want the same thing here. We all want better water, better environment. The Te Manawa Te Wai, the mori of the land and the water are critical to us, and that's what we want to do. And unfortunately, money, or farmers aren't a bottomless pit in terms of money, and they can only spend so much money doing stuff. And I'm thinking, why spend it doing modelling when we should be spending it doing stuff? And that's my deepest frustration with all of this, is we really need to be concentrating. You know, I would love to spend all of my money or that I've got extra to spend in terms of riparian management, plantings, and doing all of the stuff that I need to do, rather than wasting it on, you know, on doing overseer and stuff like this, which is not, you know, it gives us a good guide of where we're going to go, but it does not. It does, at the end of the day, is that the environment is not benefiting from it, and that's my big concern. So I think what I'm sort of looking at for here, I suppose, is we need a clear starting point, and I think we need to develop clear and concise GMP proxies that can be applied to overseer FM nutrient budgets that work. And an alternative process would be to use the recently approved BCI matrix approach, preparing a series of modelled nutrient budgets based on soil type, irrigation, and farm systems from which everybody makes reductions. The farm environment plan is the vehicle for change. So it's the actual things that happen on the farm that are going to that people are going to see. And I think the real concern that we have, or that is going to be the problem here, is that in spite of all of the things that we do, the environment will continue to deteriorate because it's going to take some time for that correction to happen because of what has happened in the past. So we have to be aware of that. And I think the other thing too is that we have to be aware that that this area of Waimakariri zone is completely different than those other zones within Canterbury, like PC1 and PC2. Here we have 65,000 cows, 65,000 people. Ashburton, 450,000 cows, 35,000 people. Selwyn Tiwaihora, 279,000 cows, and heaps of people as well. But Waimakariri zone, we have 2 swamps, the Mandeville Swamp, the Cuss Swamp. The Cuss Swamp where we farm, major food gathering area for Ngāi Tahu. We recognise that and it's been developed, but we're trying to bring it back by the riparian plans and plantings that we put in place to try to provide habitat for tuna and for other native fish species. We're trying to do all of that, but we need time to do it, of course, and we need the flexibility of the money being spent in the right in the right places, and that's why I think I'd like to support what the zone committee came up with in terms of the runoff priority area, because the soil types are heavy versus the nitrate priority area where the soil types are light and free draining. My problem where I farm is sediment, P and E. coli, and I'm trying to deal with those issues. Then I also feel that that having a floor is important as well, and I think that having a floor of 20 kilos of N per hectare is appropriate, recognising that overseer calculates the loss from the root zone, doesn't calculate the loss to groundwater, but this process assumes that that loss is to groundwater, so it takes into no account the attenuation factor, and that's an issue as well. And I think that's all I've got to say. I just really appreciate the opportunity to come down here today and put our case. But this farm that we farm, it's not very big, and it's probably not the best place in Canterbury to farm, but it's our farm. It's the only farm that we've ever owned, and it's challenging. You know, we've had the wind in 2014, we've had floods, we've had all sorts of other earthquakes, we've had all sorts of other stuff come along and hit us between the eyes, but we're still there and we're still managing to keep it together. And we also are heavily involved in the community, my wife and myself, and always have been. Again, thank you for your time and respond to questions. Maria, you got anything to say?
Welcome. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, let us see if there are any questions. Commissioner Van Voorthuizen.
Yeah, thank you. Just looking at your statement of evidence, I see that you are you're a Waimakariri irrigation shareholder, but you also, this is at your paragraph 5, you take irrigation water from surface drains. Where does the water in those surface drains come from?
Comes from springs, from the I'd say they're from the Ashley River. It's quite interesting where we take, because basically what happens is that you can appreciate the Cust River at some stage would have run out to sea, but a major flood from the Waimakariri washed out the mouth. So basically the Cust River just ran into a swamp. But there's springs from the Ashley that basically cause the water to come across, and that goes into the Cust main drain. So that's pristine spring water, and it's running at, as I said, it's running through my property around about 2.4 milligrams, and then it runs into the Cust main drain. But the Cust main drain at the top is running at around about 5.4 milligrams per litre, and by the time it gets to Three Calls Road, where the monitoring site is, it's running at around about 4.5. So over time, we as a group are working really hard. For instance, the group of farmers where we farm is called, we operate as the Cust Water User Group. So we've got a water user group we use to monitor, to run and share the water that we take from the Cust main drain and from the tributary drains. So we use that group, and we've got a website that we use to ration and share water, so that we keep the water at the minimum flow of the drain at all times. And then we've also taken that one step further to get into this justified irrigation program as well, which is really cool, because it's actually justifying what we do on farm in terms of irrigation and stuff, and it's far-reaching.
Okay, thanks for that. So as a Waimakariri Irrigation Limited shareholder, does your nutrient loss come under the scheme-wide consent held by WIL?
Yes.
So you would have had your N loss as part of that scheme-wide consenting process assessed by them under effectively the matrix method?
Yes, yes.
Do you know what your matrix method calculated N loss is?
No.
Does that concern you?
Well, it does. I'd rather like to know.
Yeah.
The thing that firstly, I think the matrix type approach is probably the way to go, and I support WIL's submission, but I think that same process should be open to all consent holders, because I think one of the things about it is that, you know, like, I'm a consultant as well, right? And when I started to process land use consents for clients, it was relatively cheap doing it, but now it costs a lot of money to do it because of all of this extra layer of stuff. You've got baseline, you've got GMP loss rate. Everything is starting to become so complicated and costly. We're moving away from what we want to do. We want to get stuff done. We want to improve the environment.
You say at paragraph 24 that you support the targeted reductions of 15 plus 15, so the first two steps in table 8.9.
Yep.
I take it that's dependent on the starting point, which you've asked to be the matrix method.
Yep.
But you don't know what that is for your farm, so...
I've got a fair idea, but the bottom line, what I would like to put forward is that we've got, as part of this process, you must have regard to the new NPS. So looking at one of my other comments that I make here is that the original baseline that was put forward at 209-213 was historic, and the coloured nutrient allocation zones were only ever a holding pattern until things got established. So I'm pretty sure when all the mayors got together in 2010, they didn't think we'd be sitting here in 2020, and then this thing's not going to become operative until 2022 as a plan change. And I think that the bottom line is that we only got to keep tax records for 7 years. Why are we having to go back and look at all this historic stuff? Why don't we draw a line in the sand now and say, let's make the starting point now, and then we've got really good records. We've got a later version of Overseer, so we'll now move from Legacy to FM, so we've got more accurate information, and we can use that as the starting point to make reductions from, because now we know where we're going in terms of a national policy statement and future direction, so we know that there's going to be no further development, and this is a good starting point that we need to make reductions from. Also, the other point worth noting too, is that when these models were all done in terms of this process, is that it assumed that everything was operative. Like every consent for a dairy farm was operative at their fully consented numbers. For example, Ngaitahu at 14 dairy farms, they've got 9 just with another 2 going in this year. So that's an example, and also every consent was irrigated to the max as well, which again, there's not many people that use their full irrigated consented amount. So the thing would look worse under a modelled situation than was actually happening.
Yeah. You give very long answers to my
Yeah,
questions,
sorry.
but I'm going to
Sorry.
risk 2 more questions.
Oh, right.
So
I don't get much chance.
you said your baseline N loss is 26, within the range of 24 to 28, and then verbally you said you added a little comment that was with the long laterals in use. And then did you go on to say, but it's now 14? Is
Yep.
that, so are you using just pivots throughout now? Or?
I've got 2 pivots, and then I've got long laterals, and I've reduced the size for 5 mil to 3.5 mils. But we use soil moisture monitoring. We've got 2 sites, and we're using very little water.
So have you abandoned the long laterals and just pivots now? Or are you still using?
I've still got about 40 long laterals,
Okay.
but they only run for 6 to 9 hours.
Yeah. Okay. And you said you have a fair idea what your matrix generated N loss is. Are you going to share that with us?
I've got a fair idea of what it is, yes, I do.
What do you reckon it is?
It's probably around about 80, I suppose.
80?
Probably around about 80, I suppose, yeah.
80?
Yep.
Yeah. And using that as a starting point, on your farm, I take it you'd support those first 2 reduction steps, 15 and 15. What would you have to do on farm to achieve that? What different would you do?
Well, I'm in the runoff priority area. So like at the moment, I'm 14. And as I said, overseer calculates the loss from the root zone, doesn't calculate the loss to groundwater. So my soils are in a lot of cases anaerobic. So what happens on light soils, as you probably know, is that urine, it's the cow urine that's the problem. On light soils, that cow urine's going through to nitrate, NO3 minus. On my soils, because they're heavy and anaerobic in a lot of cases, is a nitrate the same as ammonia, which is NH4 plus. Organic matter, because my soils are heavy in organic matter, are negatively charged. So the ammonia ion, NH4 plus, attaches to the negative ion from organic matter, so it does not leach. My biggest issue, or our biggest issue on our farm, is pea, sediment and E. coli. And that's what we are focusing on by fencing off our drains, having a significant setback and filtering, and then also having an active planting program.
Yeah. Okay, thanks very much. No further questions.
Commissioner Sullivan?
Yes, I just have a couple of questions, or just really one question. First of all, I'd like to commend you on your restoration efforts and your willingness and receptiveness to take on board Ngaitahu values. I think I can see the zone committee in that respect has had a positive effect.
Yep.
But regard to your table 3, I'm just interested to how many intermittent water flowing water bodies do you have on your property?
Table 3.
Of your submission, sorry. On page 3, sorry, your table on page 3, at the bottom of the page. You're opposing stock exclusion in intermittent flowing waters.
We have the number 4 drain at the back of the property, or that goes through the property, and then we have a number of approximately 4 surface water drains that run along laterally to the number 4 drain. So we'd have probably 3.2 kilometres of open drain, and then which are basically man-made drains, and then we have the spring-fed drain, which is the number 4 at the back.
And I presume you've fenced those off, have you?
Everything's fenced off.
Great.
So even those open drains were fenced off before they had to be fenced off. And what's really amazing about fencing off those open drains is that we have 7 different varieties of carrocks that have actually grown back, and native bulrushes that have grown back since we've actually just excluded the stock. And that's happened over the last 6 years.
So have you noticed, like you talked about sediment and E. coli issues?
Yep.
Were they connected to the drains?
They were connected to the fact that when we went there in 90, I think you've got what we inherited in 92. Basically, here's the dairy shed, here's an open drain right beside the dairy shed.
Right.
And what used to happen, and this is an old town supply area,
Right.
they had a feed pad right next to the drain. They even had a place for a high pressure hose.
Wow.
And so basically, that's all.
So
Closed off.
the sedimentation and E. coli are legacy issues?
Yep.
Okay. No, well, you've clarified that for me, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, you've come this afternoon some distance to talk to us, and I want you to understand that it's really been worth your while to do that. We had read your material and we'd understood it. We had a few questions, but just to listen to you and explain it in your own words in the way that you have has been very helpful for us. So thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you, and thank you, Commissioners, for your time. Have a great Christmas.
Next, we have Eyrewell Dairy. Mr. Shooten here. Good afternoon.
Yep, good afternoon, Commissioners. I take it you've read mine like every other submission.
Of course we have. We certainly couldn't miss out on yours because yours is, and I have it here, I made a note, a perfect dairy farm. That's what you said.
I stand by that.
And of course you do. And we're very pleased to hear about it.
Okay.
So you know that we've read the submission and the material that you've sent in, and now's your opportunity to speak to us direct face to face.
Yep, and I do thank you for that time in hearing us today. We're submitter 136. I'm here with my wife, Christy. We farm in partnership as Eyrewell Dairy Limited. We're out of our usual attire of overalls and gumboots, and we're well and truly out of our comfort zone here to speak to you today. The easy option definitely would be to not be here today, but the future significance this can have on us as a family is such that we feel it needs every opportunity to be emphasised. I guess a bit on my dairy background here. Our family moved from the Netherlands 20 years ago. In my submission, I had alluded to me finding 10 generations. I have since found more. I can account for at least 400 years of dairy farming, continuous background in my family. We've come here to New Zealand to pursue our passion of farming. Future generations have always been important considerations in how we run our farms. Everything we do is with the future in mind. We hope that our 2 children will continue in our footsteps. We believe that the way we are farming today is achieving results that are better than GMP. We have current farm environment plans for each of our properties with A-grade audit results. We constantly invest in new technology to improve our environmental impact. Plan Change 7, as it currently stands, will seriously impact the ability to run our business at its current high standards. We have farms that would be in subgroup B, C and D. The proposed restrictions in their current form are beyond our reach. We did our due diligence at the time. We received encouragement from central government, local government and our banks, as well as the irrigation scheme with the signals that they provided us. We have borrowed heavily on the back of granted resource consents and set our farms up to an incredibly high standard in both infrastructure and technology to bring them beyond GMP. With such a high level of investment in infrastructure and so many of the environmental advancements already adopted on farm, further reductions are not economically viable for us. Recognition of hard work done to date needs to be given. With Plan Change 7 in its current form, the viability of our business would be seriously undermined. We provide incomes for 15 full-time staff, up to 5 part-time staff. We employ local contractors and we spend our earnings locally. The economic impact of Plan Change 7 in its current form will be devastating for our rural community. Our submission is in support of the WIL submission and the matrix type approach. That's really all I've got to say, so I thank you for your time. I'll take any questions.
Well, thank you for that, Mr. Shooten. Any questions, Commissioner Van Voorthuizen?
No questions, thank you. But in terms of your support for Waimakariri Irrigation Limited, you're probably aware they've come before us earlier in the hearing and they presented a substantial case with legal counsel and planners and scientists, so we've certainly got all their information well before us.
Commissioner Solomon?
I just have one question for Mr. Shooten. At your paragraph 10 of your evidence in chief, you talk about the benefits of feed pads. Could you just be a little bit more specific about what those benefits are? Because we heard earlier from Mr. Rankin, and he was heralding the virtues of feed pads as well. So if you could just clarify and explain a bit more about why they're a benefit, that would be helpful.
Yep, absolutely. So in my mind, feed pad offers a multitude of benefits. It starts with the being able to stand off your stock under unfavourable conditions. Any pugging as a result of cows on a paddock under bad conditions, soil structure gets damaged, you end up with runoff of sediment and the likes. The capturing of the cow urine and the likes on the feed pad can be evenly distributed back to the paddocks at times where it is favourable, which I guess under really bad conditions, a cow urine patch on a paddock could very certainly lead to drainage of nitrogen. The other benefits that we see on our farm with a feed pad is we can manipulate, fine-tune, if you will, the diet for the cows. There are excesses of proteins in the cow's diet at times of the year. Those proteins ultimately will get excreted by the cow as urea. If you can balance the diet by adding other feeds into the system, the cow urine nitrogen content will be somewhat reduced. And at the same time, because of the efficiencies that you gather out of it on the other end, it actually makes for a much more productive cow at the same time.
Great, thank you. You've explained it well. Thank you very much. I have no more questions.
Well, it's been very satisfactory from our point of view that you've been able to come in and explain to us, and we understand now why you can say with confidence that you have the perfect dairy farm. Very interesting. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So next is Torlesse Farm. Mr. Spark here.
You might have to drive it. Just tell me what to do.
Good afternoon.
Like, yep, that first one, perfect. Okay. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Just learning how to use the computer here, but thank you very much for your time this afternoon. Really appreciate the opportunity to come and talk to you. My name's Jeff Spark, this is my wife Rochelle. We're third generation dairy farmers based in the Waimak district. We have 3 children, and in total we're farming around 800 hectares, which includes 2 dairy farms and a beef farm and some supporting blocks where we graze heifers and make silage. And in total, we employ up to 15 people in our business. We've been based up in Eyrewell for over 20 years now. So first of all, I'd just like to say that, and it was mentioned earlier, we support the Waimak Irrigation Solutions Package. And yeah, I understand that Waimak presented at an earlier hearing date. Because we believe that achievable reduction in nitrate leaching from land use activities, catchment mitigation such as targeted stream augmentation, managed aquifer recharge, and monitoring to track progress and enable continuing responses will be way more effective and sustainable at improving water quality and prioritising the health of fresh water. So we ourselves have invested heavily in infrastructure on our farms, including pivot irrigation, water storage. We have a lake on the farm which holds 18 days of storage, and having storage and investing in storage actually means we use less water because we have reliability. We've got soil moisture monitoring, we use precision fertiliser placement, etc. And we're committed to continuing that journey of continuous improvement, but we need time. And we all want to, all farmers, we all want to reduce our nitrate levels, but I also believe we need to share that responsibility. And at the moment it is targeted heavily at the farming industry, but you know, we're surrounded by lifestyle blocks, and you know, there's a lot of septic tanks there as well. So I think it's important that it's a catchment-wide solution package that needs to be considered. But our presentation today doesn't actually focus on technical aspects of PC7. I'll leave that to the experts. Yeah, our focus today, what we wanted to sort of touch on, which is actually that we believe our farmers are already contributing to the Te Mana OTY, which is the vital importance of water as part of the national policy statement. And particularly the aspect of Te Mana OTY that is the health needs of people and the ability of people and communities to provide for their social, economic and cultural well-being. And we're doing this through opening up our farm for community events such as the Oxman Motorsport Race, Canterbury Primary School's Triathlon, etc. And by giving access to our farm and irrigation storage lake, we also support other public good organisations such as the Big Brother, Big Sister, mentoring charity, church groups and sports clubs. And we really love being able to support our community like this. It's actually one thing that really drives us. But for us to continue to do that, we need to, it really does hinge on us being able to see certainty. And when I say that, I mean certainty in our future to be able to remain as farmers. Because from certainty comes confidence that we have a future pathway, and that will also give us the confidence to maintain further investment in our farm business. And from that, as we're outlining today, that from that certainty and confidence, there's potential for the whole wider community to benefit, as we are doing right now with our farm lake. So you'll see the opening photo. That's our family. That's our driver. I see 3 pillars in what we do in our life. Family's number one, but also what's important to us is our farm, of course, and our community. And I guess you could look at it like a 3-legged stool: family, farm, community, and that's us. And each of those pillars, or those 3 things on the stool, support each other and are important to us. So that's starting at a holistic level. I've put a few photos in here just to show you, what we do. This was the Oxman race last year, and how this came about was about 18 months ago I got a phone call from John Newsom. He's the race director of the Canterbury Triathlon Club. He said, I hear you've got an irrigation lake up there. I've been running this race at Lake Pegasus, which is an urban lake just north of Christchurch. It's got pollution problems. I hear you've got a lake. Could I come up and have a look? And I said, yeah, absolutely, come up and have a look. So he came up and had a look, and he thought, yeah, no, this could work. So, and we were open to it, and we just made it all happen. And anyway, we had 400 athletes turn up in December last year to do the Oxman. The second race is coming up in 2 weekends' time. And yeah, that was something we're really proud of, to be able to provide that opportunity for people to come and experience that race and to be able to host it on that farm. And we organised our farm system to allow for that, and very happy to do that. So you can see the race is about to start, and there's a drone shot of swimmers in the lake. And we talk about water quality, and so for a race like this, of course, the water has to be tested. We were holding the Canterbury Primary School's triathlon just a week ago. Unfortunately, it got cancelled because of wet weather, but they did a test for E. coli. It came back at 44. 0 to 40 is excellent. Over 260, I understand, can't be swimmable, can't be swimming. Our water quality in our lake is at 44, and according to the race director, he doesn't know any other swimming venue in New Zealand with such good water quality. So, yeah, so hence the lake's being used for recreation. Here's a shot of the swimmers, and so these are the swimmers coming out of the lake, and we're Waimak Irrigation shareholders as well, and you can see that Waimak Irrigation actually sponsored this race, so a really good example of a farmer-owned cooperative, over 200 farmers, supporting the local community. But that only is able to be done through viable businesses which have a future. And there's the aerial view, and I think I like the shot because it's quite symbolic, because here we've got a whole heap of people, mainly urban people, surrounded by irrigated dairy land. And so you'll see all the cars parked in the paddock, and the swimmers are actually out there in the lake at the moment. So I like to talk about the rural-urban connection and not the divide, and that's something that's important to us, and we see being able to be involved in our community and provide our farm for events such as this is one way we can help with that rural-urban connection. Also, I'm a shareholder councillor for Fonterra, and you know, I have contact with a lot of farmers, and PC7 it really is front of mind for a lot of farmers, for every farmer I would say in our Waimak district. And I just think we really, and I'm sure you'll take this into account, is that we need to find a workable solution which is challenging but achievable to provide a realistic pathway forward. And I think, you know, if we can focus on that goal, then, you know, it's all going to work out, and, you know, we'll see a future. So, look, I really thank you for your time, and I'll be open for any questions.
Well, thank you very much for that, Mr. Spark. Any questions, Commissioner Van Voorthuizen?
Yes, the large pond that you've shown us pictures of, so is that filled with water from Waimaka area irrigation?
That's right, yeah. So it's gravity fed in,
Yeah.
and then we pump out of that as well. So basically, there's flow coming in and out.
Yeah.
So we put that in as part of the conversion 10 years ago. It cost us $500,000 to do that, but we see that as you know, important part of sustainability for our business, and as I said, providing that reliability.
Yep. And do you know what your baseline in-loss is for your farm?
So yeah, so we're Waimaka Irrigation shareholders.
Yep.
So we're in that in their group.
Yep.
And I don't know the number.
So you don't know what their one is, but I understand as a Waimaka Area Irrigation Limited shareholder, you also do oversee nutrient budgets each year?
Yes, we do. So that I do.
Yeah.
And on this farm, we are 80.
Okay. So that's just your current operation, fed into overseer gives you 80?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. All right. And have you tried using the Ecan Farm portal at all?
No, I haven't.
Okay, all right. Okay, no, that's great. Thanks very much.
Commissioner Solomon?
I just have a couple of quick questions. First of all, I really enjoyed seeing the slides. A picture paints 1,000 words, and I'm sure the urban people enjoyed visiting the rural area. I'm positive they did. But at your paragraph 3, you talk about catch crops. Do you mean things like white clover and plantain and ryegrass? Is that the sort of crops you mean?
No, I'm talking about oats. So after winter grazing, like a crop such as kale or rape, then put in a catch crop such as oats to soak up any nitrogen that's plant available in the surface of the soil.
And in the same paragraph, you talk about, near the bottom, you talk about environmentally solid set sprinklers. What do you mean by that? So
these are the last irrigation development we did in the corners where the pivot doesn't get. We've put in solid set sprinklers which are on a timer. So they and it's all programmed so that every 20 minutes they turn on, and then this one turns off and then moves to the next one. Right. Does 20 minutes. So it's quite a capital cost intensive infrastructure, but very good as far as sustainable use of water. It's like you're only needing to use a small amount of water. It's not quite as good as the pivot, but it's a very good option for
water use efficiency.
For water use efficiency in the corners, yeah. No, but that does require quite a lot of capital investment.
All right. And I have no further questions. Thank you.
Yeah.
Just one question, might be off the point altogether, Mr. Spark, but in the second of your interesting photographs, on the right, there's something that looks as if it's a tall chimney, is it? Clad in river stones or something? Is that from the homestead, or is it got some other purpose? Tell me about it.
Well, yeah, it's a outdoor fireplace. So we have like a small house there on the side of the lake, so it gets used for quite a few things, as well as this, for recreation. But yeah, that fireplace, all those stones came out of the Waimakariri River, and it was built by a local craftsman. And I'm not sure if you drink spates or not, but I'll tell you what, this guy did. And at 11 o'clock every morning, he'd crack open the first spates, and by 2 o'clock in the afternoon, he'd finished his six-pack, and then he'd go and drive. He shouldn't have done it, but he drove to the Waimak, selected his stones, and then he came back, and they were ready for the next day. And he had no plans, nothing. And so he did the whole thing just by eye. And yeah, it's amazingly straight considering how much he loves the spates. So, but yeah, that's an outdoor fireplace, which yeah, from the local river stones.
It's like sculpture, isn't it?
Yeah, it is a wee bit. Yeah. It is a bit of a work of art, and this guy was a real craftsman. But clearly, the spates helped his craftsmanship.
Well, again, it's been worth your while coming in. It's all very well for us to read the statements, and they've been well thought through, but it's extra when you come in and explain in your own words, just like this. So thank you very much for your attention and coming in.
Thank you very much for your time.
Now, I think, Ms. Fernando, is that the full agenda for today?
Yes, that's correct.
So we've completed 24 days of hearing submissions, and we now adjourn until what's tentatively dated the 26th of February, when we hope to receive the reply report from the ECAN officers. So adjourned till the 26th of February, or whatever other date might be substituted.